Flash! In a dramatic mass breakout, several former government officials have escaped from justice. Tunneling free in the pre-dawn darkness, the dangerous crew raced into the woods, where they split up, hoping to avoid the sweeping spotlights, armed search parties, and howling bloodhounds. As the law followed in hot pursuit, several clashes broke out between officers and the bad men. Perjurer and leaker James Comey sprayed the night with machine gun fire as he climbed atop an old gas storage facility trying to escape the federales. "You'll never take me alive, you lousy G-men," Comey shouted. "I know how dirty the FBI is, and I'll never turn myself into them as long as I can go out with a bang." Then, with an insane scream of "Top of the world, Ma," Comey fired into the storage tanks and disappeared in a gigantic ball of fire. Another renowned perjurer, James Clapper, slogged desperately through a muddy stream, trying to throw the bloodhounds off his terrible scent. The snarling fugitive traded gunfire with officers before losing them, but later turned up wounded and bleeding on the steps of a nearby cathedral, where he cried out for forgiveness before tumbling down the stairs to the sidewalk where he lay still. "Who was he?" asked a passerby of a nearby policeman. "He used to be a big shot," the copper replied. Escaped communist John Brennan managed to evade the law using the skills he learned in the CIA. Brennan made his way to the 6th Avenue studios of CNN, where he'd once strutted around like he owned the world. Now he found the place apparently deserted and was left to pound pitiably on the locked doors, shouting, "Open up, you dirty rats. Don't you remember me? I was your pal." There was no answer, though several anchormen were seen peering through the darkened windows, pretending they weren't at home. Still at large are Andrew McCabe, Hillary Clinton, and the mysterious gang leader known only as the Big O. Updates as they come in. Trigger warning, I'm Andrew Klavan, and this is The Andrew Klavan Show.
I feel hunky-dunky, life is tickety-boo. Birds are winging, also singing hunky-dunky-doo. Ship-shaped, tipsy-topsy, the world is zippity-zing. It's a wonderful day, hurrah, hooray, it makes me want to sing. Oh, hurrah, hooray, oh, hooray, hurrah.
Yeah, Chicago has a reputation for being a corrupt Democrat town run by a corrupt Democrat machine, but there's a reason for that. Chicago is a corrupt Democrat town run by a corrupt Democrat machine. We saw an example of that yesterday in the Jussie Smollett case, when a police force with a tainted reputation was overridden by a prosecutor clearly acting under the influence of power. If you're looking for heroes, you can pretty much forget it. This is Chi-Town, and a city full of Democrats. It's a sure bet everyone's to blame. That's the culture that took over this country for the 8 years of the Obama presidency, and that's the culture the media is still in love with. It's not a question of Al Capone. Where Democrats achieve one-party rule in the government or the press, it's all Capone. All right, let's talk about blinds, window treatments. I mean, when you hear the word window treatments, I know you just leap up and you want to say, but the fact is, window treatments transform a room. I found this in my house, the place I'm living now. I used to walk around saying, something is wrong with this bedroom. And then my wife had beautiful blinds brought in and everything just looks so much better. Blinds.com makes it really easy for you to transform your whole living space. If you're not sure what you want or even where to start, Blinds.com will get you a free online design consultation. And they'll even send you free samples to make sure everything looks as good in person as it does online, and every order gets free shipping. Blinds.com will remake your blinds for free. If you make a mistake, they will fix it. And for a limited time, you can get up to 20% off everything at Blinds.com when you use the promo code Klavan. That's Blinds.com, promo code Klavan for up to 20% off everything. Faux wood blinds, cellular shades, roller shades, and more. Blinds.com, promo code Klavan. Rules and restrictions do apply. Like, for instance, you have to know how to spell Klavan. It's Klavan. Mailbag will be coming up later on. Oh, my God. Will be coming up later on in the show. Great questions today, so you want to stay tuned for You can tell that's how excited she is by the mailbag coming up. So Jussie Smollett, with a single leap, Jussie Smollett is free. His records have been sealed by a judge. The computer records have been wiped clean. He'll forfeit his, I guess it was 10 grand in bail, and he will either do or has done a couple of hours of community service at Jesse Jackson's Rainbow Push, which may be community disservice. Just so we're clear, right up front, this is corruption per se, right? Per se means in and of itself. This is corruption. Not because I know for a fact that Jussie Smollett is guilty. Obviously, you all remember he claimed two MAGA-crazed individuals attacked him on the street. The police did a lot of investigation and decided it was two of his pals he paid off to pretend there had been an attack on him, thus insulting every one of the 64 million people who voted for Donald Trump or might continue to like him. But this is corruption, not because I know he's guilty, but because the way we find out whether somebody is guilty is we have this thing, we call it a trial. And once you are indicted with 16 indictments, you don't just erase the possibility of a trial. You actually have to have some kind of plea bargain. You do it in public. You do it out front. This is corruption. But I want to let you know, I want to give you a really good picture, if I can, of what happened and why I take no side except the side of no corruption, which means you got to leave Chicago. And when Obama was in Washington, you would have had to have left Washington too, because remember, Obama was a Chicago Pol. What we are looking at is the culture that he came out of, and you'll see his fine hand moving in this just a little bit. And just so we're clear, I didn't really think Jussie Smollett should go to jail. I thought this was, a bad crime in the sense that he took up police time. I think there were 18 murders in Chicago while the police were investigating this. I thought he deserved to be slapped around and humiliated and tried and maybe fined and maybe forced to do a lot of community service. But, I wasn't looking for, vindictiveness or vengeance. I was looking for justice. Anyway, you can just see this Jussie Smollett cut. He came out, he was just so full of remorse and apologized to everybody. This is the cut for it.
I've been truthful and consistent on every single level since day one. I would not be my mother's son if I was capable of one drop of what I've been accused of. This has been an incredibly difficult time, honestly one of the worst of my entire life. But I'm a man of faith, and I'm a man that has knowledge of my history, and I would not bring my family, our lives, or the movement through a fire like this. I just wouldn't. So I want to thank my legal counsel from the bottom of my heart. And I would also like to thank the state of Illinois for attempting to do what's right. Now, I'd like nothing more than to just get back to work and move on with my life. But make no mistakes, I will always continue to fight for the justice, equality, and betterment of marginalized people everywhere. So again, thank you for all the support. Thank you for faith, and thank you to God. Bless y'all. Thank you very much.
I love the way with actors, it's all about him. So obviously I was joking when I said he was remorseful. He's sticking to it. He's sticking to his story. He's going back to work. He tweeted out, "See you all Wednesday." That's when his show Empire, I guess, is on. The Empire writers are tweeting out and attacking the police and saying that it was all false stuff, which it pretty obviously was not. This was not some kind of vendetta by the police. Rahm Emanuel, former Obama chief of staff, I guess, former Obama guy, was now mayor of Chicago, and he just struck back. This is the state attorney, Kim Foxx, her name is. She dropped the charge. She had. Well, I'll get back into the weeds about this in a minute because it's really worth hearing. It's a really interesting story. But Rahm Emanuel was well and truly ticked off about this.
To then use those very laws and the principles and values behind the Matthew Shepard hate crimes legislation to self-promote your career is a cost that comes to all the individuals, gay men and women, who will come forward and one day say they were a victim of a hate crime who now will be doubted. People of faith, Muslim or any other religious faith, who will be a victim of hate crimes. People that of all walks of life and backgrounds, race, ethnicity, sexual orientation. Now this casts a shadow of whether they're telling the truth, and he did this all in the name of self-promotion. And he used the laws of the hate crime legislation that all of us collectively over years have put on the books to stand up to be the values that embody what we believe in. This is a whitewash of justice.
He's not a happy guy, and neither is the police superintendent, Eddie Johnson. Let's play him too, because we're going to get into where these guys come from too.
Prosecutors have their discretion, of course. We still have to work with the state's attorney's office. I'm sure we'll have some conversation after this. But again, at the end of the day, it's Mr. Smollett who committed this hoax, period. If he wanted to clear his name, the way to do that was in a court of law so that everyone could see the evidence. You all know what the bond proffer said. You know, we all know what it said. So, you know, I stand by the facts of what we produced. If they want to dispute those facts, then the place to do that is in court, not secrecy.
So Kim Foxx, right, is the state attorney. She's the one who made the decision to drop this. Kim Foxx, and I'm going to talk about her more in a minute, but first, she got a call right away when this happened. The minute the story hit the news, she got a call from Tina Chen, who was a former chief of staff of Michelle Obama. Okay, this is all the Chicago way, right? This is Chicago way. And she said Tina Chen was complaining about the police, basically, and the police chief. And here's a little video we have of that.
I want him dead. I want his family dead. I want his house burnt to the ground.
All right, maybe that's not the real video. It's all Chicago. It's hard to tell them apart. But Tina Chen calls up and she says, listen, I've given your number to the Jussie Smollett family, okay? The Jussie Smollett family then gets in contact, texts Fox, texts the state attorney, and says, you know, we're really worried about what the police are going to do with this case. And she says, well, I'll try and get the FBI to take over the investigation. And Jussie Smollett's family says, oh, OMG, that would be a big win for us. After that, Fox recused herself from the prosecution, but the police say this is garbage. This is from PJ Media. Martin Prabe, the second vice president of the Fraternal Order of Police, said once again, Fox, is throwing the Chicago Police Department completely under the bus, which she's been doing for the last 2 years in office. He said Fox never truly recused herself from the case since her underlings remained involved. And he said, what's the difference between her recusing herself and her underlings having the case? What really has been recused here? Nothing. So obviously, the police just feeling that the state's attorney, and this is bad, right? This is the prosecutor who's basically at odds with the police. That's not what you want. You want the police doing the arresting and the prosecutor doing the prosecuting. That's what you want, especially in a town like Chicago that is riddled with crime. But how did Fox, obviously under the influence of influence, I mean, obviously this is a woman, this is a corrupt, like I said, this is corrupt per se, this is corruption per se. So we know that she was not doing the right thing. And the prosecutor is saying, well, we haven't exonerated him. They exonerated him. They took his records off the computers. I mean, they sealed the books. The only way any justice is going to come to this guy, this actor, is by the FBI saying, well, you sent yourself a threatening letter and that violates federal law, and going after him for that. I don't know if that's going to happen. But do you remember Laquan McDonald? This was a case a long time ago. I think it's 2014. He was shot by the police, and the police said we shot him in self-defense. And they did an autopsy, and the autopsy brought this into question. And you remember that Obama and Eric Holder and the Obama's corrupt Justice Department was making a big deal about any shooting that happened between the police and a person of color, even if the police officer was black. It didn't matter. They were constantly accusing police departments around the country of being racist, even though every study shows that the police do not use more force with black suspects than they do with white suspects. They don't use more fatal force with black suspects than with white suspects. As far as I'm concerned, it was done to distract. At least you're going to be saying to your wife, hey, shouldn't you be cleaning the house? Over 500,000 families shop Grove.co for non-toxic dish soap, plant-based skincare, and tree-free bath tissue. Everything available at Grove is healthier for you and the planet, and it really works, which is important. New customers will get a free cleaning set in these limited edition scents. When you place your first order of $20, you get some free Mrs. Meyer's Spring Hand Soap, free Mrs. Meyer's Spring Dish Soap, free Mrs. Meyer's Spring Multi-Surface Spray, Grove Collaborative Cleaning Caddy, Grove Collaborative Walnut Scrubber Sponges. All healthy, good, natural stuff, and it works. Try Grove now before this exclusive spring offer runs out. For a limited time, my listeners get a 3-piece cleaning set from Mrs. Meyer's Spring Scents, a free 60-day VIP membership, and a surprise bonus gift just for you when you sign up and place an order of $20 or more. Check out Grove and our special order at grove.co/Klavan. That's grove.co, not com/Klavan, grove.co/Klavan. And as you are setting about your tasks, you can say to yourself, really smells good in here, but how do you spell Klavan? It's Klavan. No E's. No E's in Klavan. So the Laquan shooting, right? It's the typical thing, right? The newspapers are putting out pictures of Laquan and his graduation, and he's an honor student. It's like, you remember, if you've read Bonfire of the Vanities, you know the routine. Turned out in the autopsy, he had angel dust in his system, so he was probably on drugs. But it also turned out that the wounds were not consistent with wounds of self-defense. Plus, there was a dashboard cam, and this was the big thing. There was a dashboard cam video, and Rahm Emanuel and basically the entire police establishment, this is before, I should point out, this is before Eddie Johnson was the police chief, the entire police establishment suppressed this video. When the video came out, it showed that the suspect had been walking away when they opened fire. One of the police officers went to prison for murder, and there were protests all over town. And then Emanuel had a very difficult time re-winning the nomination for mayor because leftist candidates almost forced him out. When he got back in, the police superintendent was replaced, and the state's attorney lost the election, and this woman, Fox, came in. So she was sent in on this wave of reaction to the police, to a police shooting that looks like it was not as good as it should have been. And now now they've got this hellion leftist who's got ties to the Obama family, basically shooting down anything with another guy, Smollett, who also has ties to Michelle Obama. So it's like everybody in Chicago. This is the entire Chicago way. That's what they call it, the Chicago way. And, George Soros was in there donating money to help get Fox elected, hundreds of thousands of dollars, according to Breitbart. So this is a political war in a dirty town, and and listen, I love the cops. I really do support the cops, but the Chicago police and the Chicago crime, the way Chicago crime is, there's something truly wrong in that city, and it's all Democrats. It is all Democrats. And we talked about this yesterday, right? This is the way a Democrat city is run. You can't say, oh, the police are the good guys, like I want to say. You can't say necessarily the police are the good guys and the state attorney the bad guys. It's all a question of influence. It's all a question of power centers. It's all a question of which part of the Democratic Party is fighting with which part. And that was the Obama White House, the IRS that silenced conservative voices during the re-election campaign, the State Department that went around lying about Benghazi and that was headed by Hillary Clinton with her classified information on her cell phone, basically where anyone could get their hands on it, the Justice Department that did this whole Russian collusion thing against Donald Trump, spying on an opposition candidate during an election year. Just an amazing kind of corruption. And yesterday, by the way, listening to the show is like listening to the news a day ahead of time. I went after the press on Monday. They went after the press later on in the day. I started talking about the Obama administration. Here's Donald Trump yesterday being questioned about where he thinks this Russian collusion narrative came from.
They and others created a fraud in our country with this ridiculous witch hunt, where it was proven very strongly, no collusion, no obstruction, no nothing. We are doing so well. We've never probably had a time of prosperity like this. It's been great.
You're accusing the people who launched the investigation into your campaign of treasonous acts. How high up do you think it went?
I think it went very high up. I think what happened is a disgrace. I don't believe our country should allow this ever to happen again. This will never happen again. We cannot let it ever happen again. It went very high up, and it started fairly low, but with instructions from the high up. This should never happen to a president again. We can't allow that to take place.
Do you think you reached the West Wing of the Obama White House?
I don't want to say that, but I think you know the answer.
He asked if this conspiracy came from the West Wing of the Obama White House. In other words, did it start with Obama? Of course it started with Obama. What on earth do you think the Justice Department went after? They started investigating Trump's campaign without Obama knowing about it. Of course it did, but Trump's not saying it. But, and people are saying, wow, that's an amazing thing for him to say. It's an obvious thing for him to say. This is the kind of corruption that Democrats live off. Every Democrat city is run like this, almost every one of them. And they pick on Donald Trump, rightly, by the way, for associating guys like Michael Cohen. I mean, guys like Michael Cohen, listen, I know these guys from New York. They're just these make-believe tough guys. They always fold when the law comes after them. And, you shouldn't be hanging out with them. It says something bad about Trump that he was. But then just take Michael Avenatti, now under arrest and charged with this kind of grotesque, gangster-esque, extortion of Nike, telling them they had to hire him for $10-20 million to clean out, or he was going to destroy them. Now he's giving press conferences where he's releasing this information he threatened to release. But just listen to the way Avenatti was treated by the press. Okay, when the next time they're attacking Trump for associating with Michael Cohen, listen to the way they treated Avenatti.
Stormy Daniels' lawyer, Michael Avenatti, is laying down the law. And is he really thinking about running for president?
Joining me now live, the man himself, Michael Avenatti.
Let's talk to somebody who understands the system very well. Michael Avenatti.
He's Donald Trump's worst nightmare. Michael Avenatti.
Michael, thanks so much for being here. Did you talk to Stormy Daniels last night? What was her reaction?
Did the president just get a new challenger for 2020? Stormy Daniels' lawyer, Michael Avenatti, may have just tossed his hat into the ring.
Looking ahead to 2020, one reason why I'm taking you seriously as a contender is because of your presence on cable news.
First, let me take a moment to brag on my former student. This dude right here, I think of him as in a Justice League with Robert Mueller to save our democracy.
A 9-year-old boy has been reunited with his mother in Guatemala. And the person who helped make this happen, Stormy Daniels' lawyer and potential presidential candidate, Michael Avenatti.
So when we're talking about a corrupt Democrat machine, we're not just talking about Chicago, we're talking about Obama's Washington, and we're talking about the press, because it's all the same thing. Yesterday, Cocaine Mitch McConnell had called a vote of the Green New Deal, this absurd thing that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez wrote and proposed, right? Got no votes. Even some Democrats voted against it. All the other Democrats voted present. They didn't want to have to say anything. And Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said, she said, oh, I told them to vote present. Like they're all marching to her orders. Mike Lee, Senator Mike Lee, God love the guy. He got up and gave a speech that was as hilarious as anything I've seen in the Senate. I wish I could play the whole thing, go online and watch it. But this is just a minute of this speech where he addressed the Green New Deal with, as he says, the seriousness it deserves.
I rise today to consider the Green New Deal with the seriousness it deserves. This is, of course, a picture of former President Ronald Reagan naturally firing a machine gun while riding on the back of a dinosaur. You'll notice a couple of important features here. First of all, the rocket launcher strapped to President Reagan's back, and then the stirring, unmistakable patriotism of the Velociraptor holding up a tattered American flag, a symbol of all it means to be an American. Now, critics might quibble with this depiction of the climactic battle of the Cold War, because while awesome, in real life there was no climactic battle. There was no battle with or without velociraptors. The Cold War, as we all know, was won without firing a shot. But that quibble actually serves our purposes here today, Mr. President, because this image has as much to do with overcoming communism in the 20th century as the Green New Deal has to do with overcoming climate change in the 21st.
So he's kidding, but Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is not kidding. She just felt that it was appalling that her virtue signaling by putting forward this absurd legislation should be mocked. Her virtue signaling should be interrupted by a vote where nobody voted for this thing. But listen carefully to her response. You haven't got the clip? All right. Well, we will come back to that. But she talks about the Bronx. She talks about the Bronx having bad air and people having asthma. And then she goes on about Flint, Michigan. Okay? Flint, Michigan, Republicans in the state of Michigan tried to save that town, Flint, Michigan. This is where you'll remember the water was filled with lead and it was poisoned because they were taking it out of a polluted river. Kevin Williamson, writing in NRO, said a word that is curiously scarce in coverage of the disaster in Flint, Michigan, Democrat. Flint, like Big Brother Detroit down the way, has a long history of political dominance by the Democratic Party. Its current mayor is a Democrat. So was her predecessor. The mayor before him, Don Williamson, was a career criminal and a Democrat who resigned under threat of recall. His immediate predecessor, Democrat James Rutherford, is a longtime Politico and was elected to finish out the term of Woodrow Stanley, who was recalled because of the financial state in which he left the city. Stanley was in effect replaced by Democrat Darnell Early. On and on. It was all a Democrat disaster. And guess who kept the Flint water emergency secret? The Obama EPA. They knew about it for 6 months. They didn't release it, so people were being poisoned that whole time. It was all the Democrats. The whole thing was the Democrats. And now, Stephen Law has a piece. He's a head of a GOP PAC, and he has a piece in the Wall Street Journal saying the Democrats now are so certain they'll win the White House in 2020 that they aren't only measuring the drapes, they're contemplating an extreme makeover of government that would advance and lock in an ambitious progressive legacy. They proposed H.R. 1. They passed H.R. 1, which would make it almost impossible to stop fraudulent voting, almost impossible to criticize government people. I mean, it was really just trying to bring back the Citizens United, to get rid of the Citizens United case. They want to stack the Supreme Court. They want to get rid of the Electoral College. They want America to be Chicago. They don't want Al Capone. They want all Capone. And they're really going to work at it if they win the majority in 2020. Coming up tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, 4 p.m. Pacific Time. Tune in to our next episode of Daily Wire Backstage. The God King of the Daily Wire, Jeremy Boring, Ben Shapiro, Michael Knowles, and me. We will all be talking about politics, culture, and the answers to fix your life for the better, guaranteed. Ha ha ha. Daily Wire subscribers get to ask the questions. Make sure to go to dailywire.com and subscribe today. We got the mailbag coming up in just a second. Just a second. Stop screaming at me. My nerves can't stand. Whatever I was going to say, pretend I said it, and then come over to dailywire.com.